I want to talk to you in more detail about the pandemic and the new restrictions being imposed tonight on 2 million people across the northeast of England. What's it going to look like? How is it going to manifest itself? Newcastle City Council, Nick Forbes is joining the leader of the council. Hello to you. Thank you for joining us on the programme. We're hearing that it's going to be another lockdown. What's that going to actually look like in real terms?
Morning, Kay. We're very concerned about the exponential rise in the number of COVID cases across the northeast. And our evidence from contact tracing tells us it's happening broadly in three main areas. That's in bars and pubs, in people's homes, and in grassroots sports. And so what we've done is try to get ahead of the curve and ask government for some additional temporary restrictions so that we can get on top of the virus in all of those areas. That means restrictions on table service only in bars and pubs, as well as a 10 p.m. Closure of all bars and pubs across our region and cafes, delivery service for takeaways only after 10 p.m, and restrictions on households meeting up with each other outside of social bubbles. We're hoping the government will give us an exemption on informal childcare arrangements for extended family members, because we know how important that is. But we're asking people not to mix outside of their own household unless they're in a social bubble, and also some restrictions on major events too. I appreciate that these are not easy measures, and people have worked so hard to get businesses up and running again after the national lockdown. Might be some fear about the impact of these, but we are working with businesses, and we want to ensure that all of our businesses who work very hard to ensure they're COVID secure and COVID safe continue to operate through this with some additional measures just to curb the spread of the virus where we know the spread is happening most prevalent.
Yeah, so just to clarify, these are the same pubs and restaurants that we were given financial incentives to go to last month. We're now being told that we shouldn't go to them or need to leave early.
No, people are still very welcome to go to bars and restaurants. The only change will be that it will be table service only. That's to ensure social distancing in all places. One of the challenges that we've got is that we have a number of pubs where people have been congregating around the bars, standing, and clearly it's very difficult to maintain social distancing when that's going on. So table service only, and a 10 p.m. finish, closure for all pubs and restaurants. That's to ensure that people can still get home safely and aren't out, because one of the challenges has been groups of people meeting up in our towns and city centres very late at night. And again, after a few drinks, that means social distancing goes out the window. So we want to ensure that that isn't another opportunity for the virus to keep spreading.
But wasn't it table service only anyway?
No, the restrictions the restrictions around that were lifted, which is why we're asking for them to be reimposed. And the other change is that we're asking people not to go to bars and restaurants outside of their social bubbles or outside of their households. That means that you shouldn't aim to meet up with people in the pub that you couldn't meet up with in your home. So I appreciate that that's, again, a restriction on people, but we think it's a necessary restriction as a preventative measure now to head off a much more damaging full lockdown, which would be the inevitable consequence if we didn't act at this stage.
So you go to the pub on your own and you're Billy no mates, and if your neighbour's there, you need to go home. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that none of us want to be in this situation. We all know that this is challenging, but actually, if people say that this is about loss of liberty, there is no greater loss of liberty than the loss of life. We've seen the numbers of COVID cases go up exponentially. We've seen it start to spread from younger people into older generations. It's going up at more or less the same rate as it was going up at the start of the original first wave. And we know that that led to thousands and thousands of deaths. And that's ultimately what we're trying to prevent. As some additional preventative measures now will head off further real challenges down the line, and that's what I'm hoping the government will confirm later today.
But Councillor, if that is the case, why don't you just go for a whole lockdown in the northeast? So the pubs are not open, the restaurants are not open, and then we don't see that figure spiking.
because so many of our businesses in the hospitality sector have worked so hard to be COVID secure, and the vast majority of them have done an absolutely fantastic job. And it would be, I think it would penalise them if they were forced to close just when they've got back on their feet again. We think a 10 p.m. closure, which frankly is only an hour before they would normally close for most of them, is an appropriate compromise and a way of keeping them open and keeping them in business, as well as ensuring that everybody understands and gets the messages around the real importance of social distancing, which frankly after a few drinks tends to go out the window.
But that's the point, isn't it? Alcohol and social distancing don't mix, do they? So while we're seeing this spike again, particularly in your areas, why not go for the whole lockdown?
That's why we're asking for table service only, because it's much easier to maintain social distancing if people are seated with table service, because you can literally see where everybody is and there's much less chance of coming into contact with people if unlike if you were actually mingling at the bar. We've taken public health advice. We've worked with the hospitality industry on this, and we're convinced that this is a safe way of ensuring those businesses can continue to operate, but with some additional restrictions just to make sure that social distancing is effectively maintained for everybody in those premises.